Welcome to Culture at Work, the podcast that explores how to maintain a strong corporate culture in a rapidly changing world. I'm your host, Tim Carroll, inviting you to learn from industry leaders on how to build an exciting culture to bring people back to the office and inspire them like never before. On today's episode, we have Ricardo Costa, Vice President at Maars US. Ricardo is a seasoned professional with over 25 years of diverse experience, including architectural design, project management, business development, sales leadership, and strategic leadership. As Vice President, he leads a distributed and talented team representing Maars Living Walls in the North American market. His responsibilities include a variety of key aspects, some of which include growing and developing a best-in-class team, support and growth of distribution partners, implement effective sales strategies in order to grow profitable market share growth, and position Maars as a preferred choice of modular construction manufacturing partners on projects. We're excited to be back this season, so let's get right to it. Ricardo, thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited about this conversation, and not just because Maars is a trusted partner of Working Spaces, but also just I've enjoyed the conversations that you and I have had and in the past, and the insights that you bring. I'm just looking forward to sharing that with our audience broadly across the country for sure.
Thank you, Tim, for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, we're going to start like we always do and ask that very important question, which is, how do you define culture?
Great question. I define culture as a few answers, and I think culture for a company brings into play a lot of different things. Obviously, personalities of everyone individually, how everyone shows up. Um, who's what do they bring to the table in terms of thought and perspective, how much they encourage others, how much they challenge others. The culture that we have at Mars is a rather unique one because we are a global organization. Mars is based in the Netherlands with a globally distributed team, and we have a team here in North America that is distributed in different parts of North America. And so everyone has a really unique background. So they bring quite a bit to the table in terms of experience, perspective, even within the markets that they're in. There's a local kind of a culture and flavor that they also bring to the table. So we're dealing with a lot of unique thought and perspective and experience that does help shape and define our culture, which is led by hard work and by positive challenge, by positive encouragement, and supporting one another because we do have to do that. So that's currently how we define culture for us.
So in the past, I've mentioned this, but I do like the idea that I've heard before, which is culture is kind of the personality of an organization. And so you said personality, but you also said thought and perspective. So I do kind of like that idea of culture being a collective thought and perspective, which
Mhm.
is interesting. I do love that. How do you mentioned a distributed team? How do you drive culture within your organization in North America for sure, um, when it's such a distributed team?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tim, and it's a challenge because we've got team members located um, in the East Coast, West Coast, Central, even in some folks in the Netherlands. So we're working with different time zones. That creates a challenge, and so
Yeah, it
I
does.
wouldn't necessarily say we're driving culture as we are encouraging hyper collaboration, a lot of really good communication, and provoking one another in a positive sense. So that's what I do is I push that logic to for everybody to have a voice, for everyone to kind of bring forth that level of experience and communication because we have to rely on that. So It's less about driving a culture than I think that we are encouraging everybody to define that culture collectively, which is really interesting.
Hyper collaboration. Great phrase. Explain that to me a little bit, and what tools do you guys use to encourage hyper collaboration?
So, hyper collaboration for us is we are a collective team. We rely on each other immensely because of our individual roles and what we're contributing to a project. And we are also in a position as a manufacturer, and we're working towards goals of supporting the ultimate outfit of a project, which we're dealing with dealers just like working spaces. So we all have a bit of responsibility to the ultimate relationship of the end user, but also this major commitment to our dealer partners. And so this hyper collaboration is really clear on our team and defined by a process and everyone's individual roles of what they're doing at what period of time. And because of the fact that everyone has this level of a responsibility, they bring themselves to the table um, at a really high level of participation and commitment. And there's something about commitment that also helps define this culture that we're all in on it from the beginning to the end. And that's what I really like about this thought about hyper collaboration is that we're communicating often, early throughout an opportunity, even post an opportunity of learning, like what was great, what could we done better. So we're over communicating based on that hyper collaboration to making sure and ensuring that the ultimate goal is reached.
So you touched on what I would call the three P's, and it's people, process, product. You touched on the product a little bit. Let's dig in a little bit more on that product side.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about Mars. Um, and for those that of you that don't know what Mars is, we're going to learn, but that's with two A's. Um, Tell us a little bit about Mars and what makes Mars different from the sundry of other options that are out there that do similar, maybe not exact, but similar things.
So Mars is a demountable wall, architectural wall manufacturer based in the Netherlands in a small town called Harderwijk, which is about an hour east of Amsterdam.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful little fishing village, a ton of history. And Mars itself is actually a family-owned name. The original owner, Luke Mars, initially started out the company 75 plus years ago in the space of modular construction for European buildings. Over the length of time, Mars has been a global leader in this space of manufacturing architectural wall systems for interior spaces that you'll find us in a variety of spaces that'll include office, healthcare, hospitality, education, airports, some residential projects, just a variety of different places. And so we are a global manufacturer. We manufacture everything that we do out of the Netherlands. We also have a manufacturing presence in the Asia Pacific market, and we have distributed teams throughout Europe, Middle East, Asia Pacific, North America. We've even performed projects in South America and the Caribbean market. But we are one of the providers in this space of architectural wall systems for one of the longest period of times. We have quite a bit of experience around being acoustic experts. You know, acoustics is one of the primary things that people want, sound control and privacy over their workplace. Aesthetically, there's so many different options that a client can decide from glazing systems or solid wall systems from different colors, different materials, different combinations of wall types. And the ultimate goal is to provide this other perspective of building out a space in a much more sustainable fashion using modular construction architectural wall systems.
So, how does modular interior construction affect culture for
Yeah,
all of our clients?
it's a great question. If you think about the workplace, the floor space, the workplace has changed so much in a really short period of time. Um, at one point in time, we were in cubicle farms and tall panels, and work was very individualized. And then an idea came to present itself as what if people were to collaborate more? And we started to experience systems panels coming lower and creating a different kind of an ambiance and starting to shape up this idea of people could collaborate in order to work effectively better with one another. That idea and logic started to get pushed even furthermore by architectural firms and clients providing feedback to say our people want more. We want more effectiveness. We want more connection in the workplace. We want more collaboration. How can we open up and get more sunlight into the space? So we started to see the floor plan open up dramatically over the last 10 to 15, 20 years, where the workplace present day is incredibly dynamic. It's hybrid. It is many of these workspaces look like your living rooms, right? There's a fine line between work and home, and it's reflected in the workplace. And so, architectural wall systems not only bring this idea of sustainability and building out a space in a much more sustainable aspect, but what if there's more glazing in the space to allow more sunlight? There's proven fact that by studies that sunlight affects us physically, emotionally. That helps, also encourage this many factors of culture for a company. We do provide architectural wall systems that have more acoustic performance. So if clients want to have more private conversations or a breakaway from the hyperactive open floor plan, there are opportunities to address that. And so modular interiors, from a sustainable acoustic and choice perspective, allows a company to dress up that floor plan in a way that can define the workplace, can define a potential culture aspect that the ultimate end user is trying to provide for their clients. And with modular interiors, if something needs to change, well, it's modular, right? If it's designed in a modular sense, it can be changed, it can be reconfigured to allow for that adaptation to that floor plan. So it's giving a lot more choice and control for the ultimate end user to define what does that space mean to their people, mean to the culture, mean to the logic of that floor plan.
Now, you've touched on a little bit of this here, but I know that research and development is a big, huge uh, thing for Mars, and um, fit, finish, all of that, and the research that goes behind it. Talk to me a little bit about that process and what makes Mars different as it relates to that.
Yeah, we have our own research and development team in house. This is a team that has been at Mars for over 20 plus years, a ton of experience, and they're also in the European market. Now, the European market and how architects and designers design a building, they look at designing a building to last 100 plus years. Unfortunately, in America, a new building is normally ripped down in about 20 to 30 years. It's starting to change a little bit here and there, and there's really nice projects that we're seeing develop. But the mindset and logic of how construction is performed in Europe that's just how they think. And not only do they think about the building lasting for a long time, they also think about how does everything inside the building speak to one another in terms of function, logic, culture, reconfigurability. What does it need to be after its initial install? And so our R&D team has had the really nice opportunity to really dig into that mindset. And our portfolio is incredibly robust. There's so many offerings in terms of glazing to solid construction to freestanding architecture, even to spatial boundary products. And so the mindset of our R&D team is coming from a place of, well, we're bringing a lot of this history and DNA of architectural design into our portfolio. So the portfolio is mirroring quite a bit of history of development of modular interiors. And the perspective that we're now looking at from an R&D perspective is not necessarily do we need a new wall or a new door, but how do we refine our portfolio to perform better, to enhance the space better? Can it even open up more choices for the client as they're going through the process of design and thinking about their space?
So, look, out in the field, we get a lot of people that are out there, a lot of other companies touting how fast they can get to market, how fast their lead times are. And to be fair, Mars, it's coming from the Netherlands. You've said it a few times. That
Sure.
that's not an overnight trip
Hmm.
for product. Um, but speak a little bit to what's more important, the speed or all the things that you just said in the research and development and the fit and the finish. What ultimately should a client be looking at?
Yeah, Tim, it's a great question. And we see that projects in the United States, quite honestly, even globally, that the construction schedules have become a lot more compact. That they have, right? And it has forced all the players, general contractor, all the subcontractors to also work in a smaller space of time, right? And it's become a little bit more reactive than proactive. We, as a manufacturer, are manufacturing products in the Netherlands. We are dealing with the Atlantic Ocean. So we do have the full capability of and a lot of experience with shipping product through air or sea, which we do. But what we find is that the most powerful place of conversation, and it's related to our business, also reflected in how a business unit, our business unit culture mindset is that we're in the place of having thoughtful conversations with architects and designers and end users, real estate folks, general contractors of approach the space thoughtfully as early as possible. Think about your culture. Think about your people. Think about the function that you're looking to have in the space. And this is how Mars can go down the path and journey with you because we bring a quite a bit of experience and level of understanding of how our portfolio can support a lot of those conversations. And oftentimes, there is a lot of space and time to have those thoughtful conversations. It usually happens way earlier on in the design process, but that's where we can help architects and designers, the end users, to go down that pathway to make the best decisions for their space, especially if they're considering modular construction.
And look, day two costs are insurmountable. And by that I mean you can go with the faster, you can go with the cheaper, but that day two cost where the CEO or whomever is sitting in their office and going, wait a minute, why can I hear everything that's happening outside of my walls? And why can they hear me? I didn't know that's how that was going to be. Wait, somebody's going to have to answer to that. I would hate to be that person that had to answer to that decision. Um, and I think you can have smoke and mirrors on speed and price, but at the end of the day, this is so important to the overall success of a space. You don't want to like I always say, I don't want to go to get LASIK eye surgery from someone who's given me a deal, to buy one get one free. Give me the full price. You don't get this wrong, right? You
That's
don't
right.
want to mess around with eye surgery. You don't want to mess around with this and go the cheaper route and lose out on all the things that you can get on day 2, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, this oftentimes because of the speed of the projects, the thought and consideration of thinking about doing it the right way, and oftentimes you that conversation of day two is often forgotten because there's so much speed and emphasis on getting the initial project done that sometimes the shortcuts or things that the conversations that were not had become issues day two. And that's where we do bring up some of the things to think about initially and upfront, like consider this, consider points, 1 through 10. If you don't address this, these might be issues later on. And so we do find ourselves in a very consultative place. All of our team members, they love to have that conversation. And I mentioned something about their own experience. Everyone on our team has a construction or architectural background. So they've experienced these pain points at some point or been involved with these conversations. So they're coming in from a very from a coaching perspective to guide and like, hey, let's do this the right way. Um, do we lose on projects where we can't compete on speed, or sometimes we don't have the opportunity to have the conversation? Yeah, we find ourselves being on projects earlier today because we're pushing these conversations, and clients are realizing that they've done this before more than once or twice. And what's the definition of insanity that has been coined, right? Doing it over and over again and expecting different results. I think clients have become a lot more thoughtful and intelligent that, hey, we're not going to do this again. We are going to build up some upfront time to really investigate and research and not have to deal with these day two issues that we've always dealt with.
Now, from a cultural standpoint, we've talked a little bit about fit and finish, but why should that be important to an organization culturally in
Mhm.
their decision making process?
That's a great question. People take quite a bit of pride in their space, right?
Right.
And it's no secret that we all spend probably the most amount of our human existence working in an office or in a workplace. Um, and so people take great pride in knowing that they work in a great, beautiful space, that they have access to a lot of choices when they go to work. And so, the fit and finish, the quality, the appearance, that all has a psychological impact on that person in work. Maybe a person goes to work with a crummy morning, but their space is so gorgeous and so thoughtful, and it provides them such an array that it psychologically changes their day. So there is quite a bit of research that, the fit and finish, the choices, the colors, the options, the variety address into that workplace, not only walls, but also furniture and other functions and technology. It all has a play on how a person feels, and that does help shape up that culture.
And if and I don't want to overstate this, but if you can agree that what we do at work can affect our home life, and what happens at home can affect work. I think what we do as an industry really does have a higher purpose because we can provide a space where people enjoy coming to do their best work and go home and feel better about what they've done and have a better home life, right? And so I don't want to overstate it, but I really do think that that is important in what we do. And I've seen people when they've changed spaces up their productivity. They wanna live up to the promise that this new space provides, right? And so fit and
Right.
finish plays, I think, to a big degree on the culture of an organization, right? And what the feeling and the collective thought and perspective is that we talked about earlier of
Mhm.
that organization, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think that's an important piece, that when we all are hired to, we all want to win on an RFP and a project.
Yeah, we
Oftentimes, we have to remind ourselves that we all play a key role in shaping that ultimate end user space and that culture.
that's right.
And that's really exciting to be in the space that we are as one stakeholder of that responsible or that responsibility to the client. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Our team and all of our partners, which includes working spaces, brings quite a bit of that experience and excitement to the table because we've seen such a magical array of different types of projects that have different personalities, that we are in an ultimate space to coach and guide the end user and coach the architect and designer, GC, the real estate people on like, hey, we've seen iterations of this. Think about doing it this way. And these are some of the things that we've seen in the past that has worked, Matt, some things that may have not worked. So, something about our culture, the Mars culture, is we're bringing quite a bit of that to that table. And we're really excited about every project that we're working on. I find ourselves having questions around, hey, what kind of space is this? Are there renderings? 'Cause we get really excited about like, oh my God, this is a great client in St. Louis, and this is what their space is going to look like. We love going in afterwards and taking tours because we want to experience that culture ourselves too. That's what that's what really drives us too as a company and a culture. And I know that drives working spaces as well, that level of excitement to be in the place of coaching and driving culture.
Yeah, we absolutely want to be a thought leader and drive that from the very beginning for sure. Now you have the uh, privilege of working all over the country, right, and to see things and what's happening. And we're for the most part in the middle of the country. Our offices are from Denver to Orlando. That middle, Kansas City, St. Louis, Nashville. That in my experience, a lot of things happen on the coast and then work their way in. What are you seeing that's the driving trends and things that are happening maybe out there on the left or right coast that will be eventually moving its way to the center?
Yeah, great question. We see an array and a dynamic offering of different types of designs and approaches. Definitely, and it's all dependent on the client's viewpoint of what they want to provide their clients, their internal stakeholders, and their audience members. We see a lot of glass on projects, so there's a lot of desire to bring in a lot of sunlight, open up the workplace as much as possible. We're also seeing this return of companies are still struggling with getting their people back to the office, right? From since the pandemic days now. And the pandemic may seem like it's long ago, but it's still kind of close to us. And companies are still trying to figure out like, what does my floor plan look like? And I don't know if these folks are going to be in the office twice a week or three times a week. Do they need an office? Do they need a conference room? Who's using it? And so we are seeing a lot of the open environment still being pushed, but a lot of flexibility. We're seeing markets where they were building out in traditional construction that's fixed in place with sheetrock. Now they're considering more modularity because clients are saying, I don't know what this space is going to look like in 6 to 8 months from now. So instead of me going through demolition and building this out again, which is costly that day too, I want to have a little bit more opportunity to quickly change at a lesser cost with keeping the same level of fit and finish. And I want to design this correctly up front so that I can have a little bit more control. So we're seeing that on a lot of projects. The West Coast has this explosion of AI and technology, and they really push the boundary on what the workplace does look like. And they're also thinking about a lot of freestanding architectural options, spaces with ceilings, without ceilings to define space. It's really interesting. It's really exciting. I think in the next year or two, we're going to see some really interesting types of designs being published because clients are still challenged, right? And I think architectural design firms are at a point where they can help define what this next iteration of the floor plate does look like.
We're going to break away for just a quick message, and we'll be right back after this. At Working Spaces, we do much more than just sell furniture. We immerse ourselves in the culture of each and every client, and then create spaces that inspire creativity, inspire productivity, and inspire connectivity. So if you're looking to create an office space that inspires your employees to want to come back to the office, collaborate face-to-face, and do their best work every day, contact Working Spaces. Working Spaces, the innovative leader in office furniture and design since 1999. now in 6 markets nationwide. Welcome back to Culture at Work. You mentioned something that I think is interesting is that I said everything moves a lot from the coast to the center, but I do think the center was driving the back to the office more than the coasts were, and that's moving from the center outward, I think. But you also uh, touched on kind of the environmental aspect of going with modular interior construction and specifically Mars as opposed to traditional construction. So, talk to me a little bit about the benefits of that, and again, how that affects the organization.
Yeah, great question. A lot of companies have taken sustainability into mind a lot more often now, and even beyond your quote unquote lead project, right? They're going beyond and understanding where material is coming from, what does that supply chain look like, how things are manufactured, but also they're being very mindful of once the material is built in their space, does it have the sustainable criteria that they're looking into creating healthy spaces, right? Less off gases and making sure that if they do have change to that environment, it's above a less impact to the actual environment from a recycling perspective or a reusability perspective. So clients are truly thinking about this a lot more thoughtfully in a bigger picture sense. So that's where modular interiors does come into play, where day two, if it's designed upfront correctly from a modular perspective, this idea of modularity and keeping that in mind, a client has a lot more control over that space with less impact to the environment or to less impact to waste. Right? If you build spaces out of sheetrock construction, if you have change, you've got to demolish that and scrap it, and it goes to either a recycling center or it just goes into a dump. And there's a cost to that, by the way, for actually doing that. Even on new construction, you have a ton of waste developed from new
Right.
construction out of sheetrock construction methodology. So for modular interiors, it brings in sustainability in mind, but it brings all these other factors that a client is thinking about, the health of the space in mind. And by the way, Tim, there's architectural firms now that are also elevating the requirements around upfront what their designers are looking to specify. It's creating an opportunity for manufacturers to also elevate their own game or offering around more sustainable practices around materiality, how it's made, how it's constructed, and also what is the day two aspect of that product.
So you mentioned health, and I think that's an important thing. We talk a lot about how the space, if it's done right, that people can leave, employees can leave healthier than they arrived,
That's right.
emotionally, physically, cognitively. They can leave healthier than they arrived. And some of that is light, some of that is sound and the acoustics, some of that is being able to have a respite, a place they can go, or maybe go and get some heads down work done. All of
Mhm.
that plays into what Mars provides and the health of the employee, right?
That's right. Yeah, the material itself is made from a very sustainable approach. We use as much recycled or recyclable content in the material. We use products that have little to no off-gassing. We provide a lot of materials that, from a health perspective, is thought about at one of the highest priorities. I mentioned that the company's been around for 75 plus years. Not only has Europe been designing in a modular perspective for a very long period of time, but Europe has also embraced sustainable practices and environmental choices for a really long period of time. So that is a part of the DNA of Mars already for an incredibly long period of time. So we have quite a bit of experience of working on LEED and BREEAM-based projects. BREEAM is also kind of a global level of criteria for sustainability at different points and measures as well. And all of these have a major push for Mars to elevate what we do in terms of sustainability. And we're always looking at improving that as well. Just because we see that, buildings have an afterlife and spaces have an afterlife, and Mars can be a part of that sustainable mindset and practice.
So we have time for one more question. And really, tell me if you can how important and I'm setting up a really softball here, but how important is that local partner, like a working spaces or the other distribution partners you have around the country? How important is having the right partner in the right place to Mars and the success of Mars?
Yeah, great question. It's a good softball and an easy one to hit. It's an easy one to hit because Working Spaces, as an example, has been one of our longest partners in North America. Working Spaces has embraced the logic of bringing in a different thought and consideration to these spaces. And not only does Working Spaces already is a leader in selling solutions, but they have invested into champions that can have these extended conversations as a true partner. So they have support around sales and design and the project management, the execution, and they are an ultimate partner to the client, to the GC on that project because they're bringing such a level of expertise and knowledge and commitment not only to that project but also to all the stakeholders. When you're when you're accepting that contract, you're also accepting a lot of relationships, and those are long-term relationships that Working Spaces has not only excelled at, they've extended into a long-standing history of successful projects and relationship building that from ours, you guys have become an ultimate partner. Also, because you provide quite a bit of feedback to us on what clients are thinking, what the local market is asking. And so it's a working relationship between us both. We're not just a manufacturer provider. We truly are a committed partner. When things are great, great. When things go off the tracks a little bit, we're still there. And we're working to resolve and making sure that the client is happy and they're getting what they want or even more.
Well, as advertised, you exceeded even my expectations. The insights are really great, and man, we're just so proud of the partnership we have with Mars, and look forward to many years to come together. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate you joining us today and just sharing a little bit about how Mars can affect culture in a big way in spaces. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Tim. Thank you for having me, and we appreciate all your partnership and everything that you do as well.
Thank you.